Hello and welcome to Cube Speed. My name's Richard, and in this episode we're going to be looking at our short shifter to suit the Toyota Soarer and also the Lexus SC300, and we're looking at the Z30 series with the 5-speed transmission. Now this is the version to suit the remote mount, or what's sometimes known as the tripod mount style shifter. There is also a direct mount style shifter, and we're going to show you both of those transmissions soon, just so you can work out which shifter you've currently got in your car, so that way you can order the correct short shifter from us. But firstly, just a bit about the short shifter itself. So one is it's going to reduce your shifter throw by about 30%. It's also going to make your shifting feel a lot more precise and a lot more accurate as well, and just a lot more fun and more enjoyable compared to that loose and wobbly kind of factory shifter. With our shifter, it's also got centering springs in it as well, so which hugely assists like with the second or third shifts, so it makes it almost impossible to miss that shift using our shifter. It also helps you work out where you are on the shift gate like at any given time as well, so it makes things more accurate there. So a bit about the construction. So it's got a billet aluminium housing, it's got a hardened steel shifter shaft, also heavy duty bushings in there that have been pre-installed. The kit also comes with new bushes for your selector shaft, so these are a heavy duty item as well. Shortly we're going to show you how to install all of that, and like I said, we're going to show you the difference between those two transes as well, so I'll be back with you soon. Okay, so we just thought we'd show you the difference between the remote mount, or what's sometimes known as the tripod mount style shifter, and the direct mount shifter. So it's important to check because you could have actually either of these shifters in your car, but it's pretty easy to tell the difference, particularly if you get underneath the car. With the tripod mount or remote mount, you'll be able to see this frame hang off the back of the gearbox. So that means you've got the tripod mount or remote mount style shifter. Also, if you don't want to get underneath the car, you can take the gear lever boot off, and then there's also a seal between the transmission tunnel and the gear lever. And when you remove both of those, you'll be able to see you've got this straight up and down top lever. You might also be able to see under the trans tunnel and see that you've got this frame here. So the other style of shifter is the direct mount. So with the direct mount, the shifter lever or the shifter assembly is mounted directly into the transmission itself, which is why it's called the direct mount. So this one's just got a single bend in it. Some of them have got a bit of an S bend or a Z bend. But that's really the difference between the direct mount and the remote mount style shifter. So next we'll move on to the install. Okay, so now we're just going to move on with the installation. But before we go there, we'll just show you what the standard factory shifter's like. So we'll just roll it through the gears there a bit. So you can see there's quite a lot of throw in that factory shifter. And then also when it's in gear, you can see like just the crazy amount that the gear lever moves about by as well. So installing our short shifter will do away with all of that. So we'll move on with that. So we've obviously removed this gearbox from a car just to show you a bit more easily how the whole thing goes together. But you don't need to remove your gearbox. You can definitely install our short shifter while your trans is still in the car. So the way to do that is the first thing you do is just to remove your gear lever boot. And then there's also going to be a seal between the trans tunnel and the shifter lever, so just remove those. And then working from underneath the car by putting the car up on ramps or axle stands at the front is to drop the back of the gearbox down a bit. So just drop it down by about 25mm or an inch, and make sure the back of your gearbox is still supported, so it's not just like hanging there like on the engine mounts and the exhaust and so on. And then by dropping the back of the gearbox down a little bit, you'll be able to access these bolts on the top of the trans a little bit easier, and also these ones on the shifter housing as well. So so we'll move on with just removing the factory shifter. So the first thing to do is just to peel back this dust boot here, which is underneath the gear lever. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to remove these two bolts on this bridging piece, which just goes between the gear lever and the extended selector shaft. So we'll just speed through this bit here. Okay, so now we've removed those. We'll just remove this bridging piece, like that. And then there's a bush, which goes on the bottom of the shifter lever, and then there's one on the bottom of the extended selector shaft, and we're going to be replacing both of those. So the next thing to do is just remove the factory lever. So you do that just by undoing these 4 retaining bolts. So we'll just speed through this bit. Okay, so now we've removed all of those, we can just pull the factory lever out. So that just pulls up and out of the shifter frame like that. So once we've removed that, we can fully remove this dust boot, which is sitting over the extended selector shaft. Okay, so we've got that removed. Now the next thing to do is to remove the shifter frame off the gearbox. So what we might do is we might zoom you in a little bit just so you can see us undoing that. Okay, so we just need to remove the shifter frame just by undoing this bolt at the top, and then there's one down on this side, and then the same on the back side here as well. So this shifter frame we've already put in like a solid mount kit, but the same applies even if you've still got the factory bushes in there. So we'll just speed through just undoing all those bolts. Okay, so once you've undone those bolts, just carefully slide off the tripod frame. So just be really careful not to drop these. They're really quite brittle and they break quite easily. So we'll just remove that. We'll just put that over there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just remove this housing. So there's just 6 hold down bolts on here. So we'll just speed through just undoing all those bolts. Okay, so now we've removed all those bolts, we can just remove this housing. And there's a metal gasket here that we can just remove. So the only reason we remove that housing is so we can get through to this bush here. So there's a replacement one of these in the kit, and we'll show you how to remove and replace that. Okay, so to remove this bush, we found the best way to do it is just grab a pair of pliers, and grab it like that, and then just kind of just lever it off, okay, just like that. And then to install the new one, you want to grab your new bush out of the kit. Put it down on a bench, like with the open side facing up. Put the ball in the cup of the bush, and then hit the top of this housing with a rubber mallet, just to kind of like snap it into the bush. So we'll just do that now. It'd be really hard to film, so unfortunately you won't actually see what happens, but there it is. She's on there nicely. So now we can start the reassembly. Okay, so now we're just going to continue with the reassembly. So we're just going to put the housing back on. So you just need to line that newly installed bush up, just with the selector inside the gearbox here. But before we do that, put the plate back on. So just line that bush up in the selector. Beautiful. And then put your six hold down bolts back in. So again, like we'll just speed through this bit. Okay, and then just torque them down. So just working like in a crisscross kind of pattern. Okay, so now we've got the housing installed, we're just going to reinstall the frame. So we'll just probably speed through a lot of this. So just get all the bolts in like finger tight before you start doing them up with the ratchet. Okay, so now we can start reinstalling the shifter. Okay, so now we can move on to installing our short shifter. So on this one we've already pre-installed one of our Billet aluminium gear knobs with our logo on it there. So the short shifter just sits on top of the shifter frame like that, and then it's just secured with the 4 hold down bolts that are provided. So we'll just speed through, just screwing those bolts in. Alright, so now we're going to move on to installing the bushes on the selector shaft, but we'll just move the camera in a little bit closer for that. Alright, so now we just need to install these bronze bushes. So there's 2 of those, and then there's 4 O-rings as well which come in the kit. So the bushes just go in the selector shaft there, just with an O-ring on each side. And then one on the bottom of the shifter shaft there, and then an O-ring on each side. So it's a good idea actually to use a bit of grease on these bushes as well, because they are like a moving pivot point. And then you put your bridging piece back on. So the bridging piece which goes between the shifter lever and the extended shifter shaft, extended selector shaft I should say. Okay, and that's just re-secured with the 2 factory bolts. Alright, and then you can do these up really tight. Okay, and then just pull the dust boot back around and reattach it to the shifter frame. Okay, so that completes the install. So we'll just give it a bit of a test out. We'll just run it through the gears. So you can probably tell that shift distance is much shorter than what it was previously. Shift also feels just like super accurate and precise as well. And also with those centering springs, it's just returning to the 3/4 gate really nicely, so you know where you are on the shift pattern at any given time. So all you need to do now is just put all your car back together again. Go and take your car out for a test drive, shift some gears, have some fun, and we'll catch you again next time. Thanks for watching.